Good morning and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be going over the 10 best gold making classes. Now just stick around and enjoy the video. Okay, so when it comes to classes, we generally want to get the best bang for our buck for basically getting the most amount of gold possible. These different types of classes we'll be going over today have different types of attributes and abilities that can actually increase their amount of gold overall, and also unlock specific different types of farms for them in order to increase the gold that they're actually pulling in. That being said, let's get into our first one at number 1, which is the Mage. Now the Mage is a great class in order to do, and this is generally because of its high amount of AoE abilities. Some keynote moves are Blizzard and Arcane Blast. These are pretty dang good in order to make gold with, and this is where you'll be gathering up loads of mobs and burning them down either with Blizzard or Arcane Blast. You can always use Flame Strike, but that is a bit slow overall. The best one, of course, is obviously Arcane Blast, as this one can just be spammed, and in old world content this works really efficiently, especially when you're just running through dungeons. The things of note that you may want to consider with this is your blink ability. This will move your character forward even more and can increase your run time if you are just constantly running through that either dungeon or just in the open world in general if you're having to clear a lot of ground quite fast. This is something that I find quite helpful in the overall scheme of things, and as a keynote for this class, the ability to teleport anywhere just makes it generally an easy way in order to just get around the different types of zones as well, so you can go from one farm to the next if you are searching for different things. Most notably for this class is the Tome of Polymorph farm, and these farms are mage specific. These ones can be farmed up in different types of areas, and the tomes that in which you can farm is the Polar Bear Cub, Monkey and Porcupine. The Porcupine is farmed within the Jade Forest against all of the porcupines. The Monkey can be farmed up either from the monkeys within like the Vale of Eternal Blossoms or the Valley of the Four Winds, as well as the Dead Mines, I might happen to add. The other thing of note for that is the Polar Bear Cub, which can be farmed up in Dragonblight from the Grizzly Bears. Now these farms are overall really handy, and they can pick you up a decent amount of gold. The thing of note for this is the Tomes of Polymorph may sell for a hell of a lot of gold, but overall they do take a while in order to drop, and you are lucky if you get them in the first 5 minutes. That being said, they do go for a decent amount of gold, but the sell rate on those do tend to fluctuate from server to server, so patience is a factor when trying to sell these on. The Mage is definitely one of my most favourite classes in order to farm with. This is generally speaking because I can just spam Arcane Blast for a dungeon and not have to worry about stuff, as well as jumping around the open world is very handy when I'm trying to get to different types of zones in order to do different farms. That being said, that is the Mage at number 1. Now let's move on to number 2, which is the Warlock. Now much like with the Mage, the Warlock has great abilities in order to actually farm with. This has its Rain of Fire ability, which is an AoE ability, which is very handy for gathering up mobs and burning them down. One keynote thing for them is they are able to summon a Voidwalker, which can tank for them, so they can do higher end content without having the ability of basically dying easier. They have a bit more survivability because they have that Voidwalker tanking for them. However, you can always just use standard pets as well, which can always do additional damage. The best thing about the Warlock is that it has a wide variety of different dots which can burn down different types of mobs relatively fast. I generally think that the Warlock is a pretty dang good gold farming class, especially when it comes towards its Warlock specific farm, which makes it very good in order to make gold with. This is the Sealed Tome of Lost Legion, and this can be farmed up within Isle of Thunder. Now the Isle of Thunder drops the Sealed Tome of Lost Legion for Warlock's Green Fire from the respective rares from that zone. This is where this will take you around about 7 minutes to clear the entire island of their rares. Generally speaking, I prefer to farm this early in the morning as not many people are up, and I can get around the island without any problem, and all of the rares will be up at that point. Overall, I find that this class is definitely well worth gold making with, especially when it comes to the Sealed Tome of Lost Legion, as that goes for a decent chunk of gold, as well as it is relatively easy in order to farm up if you are doing it on a daily basis. Aside from all of that, this class is much like the Mage in regards to its AoE abilities and its different types of dots, which it can just spam onto loads of different mobs, along with its bonus abilities of being able to just have a Void Walker tank for them, which makes it just so much easier for doing higher end content. That being said, the Warlock is definitely higher up on the list for the Mage, as the Sealed Tome of Lost Legion farm does make it a bit more better, as the Sealed Tome of Lost Legion sells faster than the Tomes of Polymorph. Therefore, let's move on to our next one at number 3, which is the Death Knight. Before we continue, consider supporting the channel by getting Dallas' Guide to Gold Making, coming as either ebook or paperback on Amazon. This covers all aspects of gold making and how best to optimize yourself to make gold now and into the future. The link is in the description down below. Thank you. Now back to the video. Now, the Death Knight in my review for this is definitely a class to be keynoted on. This has some great abilities, especially with its different types of plagues that it can put onto different mobs. I generally use just the plagues in general, just to knock out loads and loads of mobs, as you only really need to spam the button like once or a couple of times, depending on the actual level of the mob, and it will just burn them down. It's an amazing different type of dot ability, as it just spreads like a plague and just burns down all of the mobs in that vicinity or area. This also does have extra abilities using its Army of the Dead abilities, as that can provide you with more damage and also with more AoE ability. This is because with its Army of the Dead you can just summon loads of ghouls at once, and by the time the timer is up they explode, causing mass AoE damage. This is primarily good for doing higher end content, as they are also plate wearers, so they generally have more survivability. And also along with that, with the additional AoE, this can usually add up quite significantly, especially when you're running different types of dungeons and old school raids, as they basically do the work for you. Alongside that, this class does not have any specific farms in order to do, but overall is definitely a strong contender for gold making, just due to their high ability of AoE. So therefore I've put the Death Knight at number 3. Coming in at number 4, and at no surprise, is the Shaman. Now the Shaman class is definitely a class to actually keynote on, as the Shaman basically can just do mass AoE. The Shaman has the ability of Chain Lightning, which is always my most favourite pick for open world farming, and this is mainly due to the innate ability of just being able to chain all of that lightning into those mobs and just burn them down really fast. This is definitely a great AoE ability. I prefer this over the plagues from the Death Knight, hence why I've placed them higher on this list. But overall, they do have some extra abilities, which is their Earth Elemental and Storm Elemental, that they can summon alongside their totems, which cause more AoE damage. But the Earth Elemental is able to tank for you for a specific amount of time. Now, this is generally speaking a great one if you're trying to burst something down and it hits rather hard. So this is like higher end content in order to actually farm stuff. I find that this works rather well, and overall the Shaman in general is just a great farming class if you don't have any of the higher tier classes at your arsenal. So overall, a great mid-ranged class overall. That being said, let's move on to our next one, which is the Hunter. Now the Hunter comes in at number 5, and overall I find that the Hunter works rather well. This is because they naturally have a pet always out, so they don't have to summon it or anything like that, so they don't have to have a time limit on their pet. They can essentially always be out, and they can always tank for them. This is great in the grand scheme of things, as you can do higher rank content, along with their high ability of volley and just being able to just barrage people with arrows at long range gives them a bit more survivability, as well as their feign death abilities. They can just negate aggro, so if you're trying to reset a mob like the Dead Mines farm, then you'll be wanting to do that. Aside from all that feign death is just a really good ability, especially if you're just running old world content and you don't really want to kill the mobs and you're going for a specific mob. You can just feign death and then all the mobs will reset and you can just run straight to that boss. This is what I generally do when it comes towards Versitus. Other than that, this class is overall a great AoE class. It has the ability to just burn loads of stuff down, as well as its survivability and its tanking mechanisms, making it a great mid-range class in order for gold making. That being said, let's move on to our next one at number 6, which is the Monk. Now, the Monk is definitely a class of note. Now, this is because they have great AoE abilities, as well as they have the best ability for open world farming, especially for hyperspawn farming, and that is the Ox statue. This is where it will gather up all of the mobs to attack that statue, whereas you won't have to just run around, you can just pull them all towards you using the Ox statue, and the Ox statue will actually tank for you. This is brilliant for hyperspawn farming and just open world respawn farms, as they can just gather up all of those mobs. You can burn them down all in one place, and then they'll just keep respawning and dying and respawning and dying. Especially with a group, this works really well. They are a great supporting class for gold making as well, especially with druids. So if you had one monk to 4 other druids, then you can obviously farm a lot more efficiently, as the boomkins can just spam on that while you're gathering up all of those mobs. Alongside that, they have some great abilities and great survivability, especially with their healing as well as their AoE abilities as well. This generally makes them a very strong contender for gold making, and overall I find that this class is just in general a great gold farming class for just making some decent gold in the open world. When it comes towards dungeon farming, however, I wouldn't actually recommend this class, and I would go on to number 7, which is the Warrior. Now, the Warrior is a great dungeon and raid farming class due to its heroic leap abilities, its charge abilities, and just in general is able to get around a dungeon much faster than most other classes. I find that the Warrior has some great abilities when it comes towards running through dungeons. I generally will go for the charge ability, as I'll just pick a no noteworthy mob and I'll just charge at it, or a critter, and then that gets me around the dungeon even faster. Failing that, I will heroic leap as well to just get over obstacles, especially like Black Fathom Deeps. I can just jump over instead of going all the way around, which saves me some time going through that. The most favourite ability for the Warrior is their AoE ability, which is Whirlwind. I use Whirlwind quite a bit, and especially because it can just be spammed like non-stop, and that means that I can just do mass amounts of AoE damage. Even if I'm running fast through a dungeon, I can just burn all those mobs down really fast as I'm running through. That being said, Warrior is just definitely a great farming class, especially as it's able to clear obstacles, it's being able to run through dungeons and raids really fast, as well as strong AoE abilities like Bladestorm and Whirlwind. Just makes it an overall great raid and farming class to actually use. So overall, the Warrior comes in at number 7. Now, coming in at number 8, and at no surprise, is the creme de la creme, which is the Rogue. Now, the Rogue is a great class for gold making. This is because of its speed boost abilities, as it can just get around dungeons and raids really fast and the open world. Its speed abilities are not negated that much and can generally just get around a dungeon really fast. Keynote things when it comes towards the Rogue is its ability to pick lock. As with old world dungeons and raids, there are treasure chests within them, and rogues can just open them without having to find the keys or anything like that. you can just pick lock the chests and then be able to get additional loot for your time, and that usually stacks up quite well when you're doing dungeon farming, especially like dungeons like RFD, RFK, and also Shadowfang Keep, which have a large amount of chests within them. This can definitely stack up quite nicely and can give you a lot of decent gold through this. Along with that, they do have some great AoE abilities, especially combined with their poisons. They are able to burn down mobs in a very fast manner, and overall they just generally are one of the best classes for gold making. This is also paired with their rogue specific farms for the dice, the dwarven dice, the worn troll dice, and also the loaded gnomish dice. These dice can be farmed up in their respective zones, and this is from like the people of the Scala Onslaught for the dwarven dice, which is generally in Icecrown. You can also get the worn troll dice, which can be got a hold of from the Cavaldir, which are just off of the Argent tournament. Just go north. I know you probably will think you're going into the sea, but you won't, you'll find an island. And with the loaded gnomish dice, it is from the explorers within Uldum. Now, aside from all of that, these dice can sell for a hefty chunk of gold. They do granted sell for a bit more, but also the sell rate for those do tend to sell a bit slower, so that you may want to bear that one in mind. If you're going to go do hours upon hours, you may want to just do 1 hour of each, get one dice, and then see how fast you can sell them on your server. Aside from all of that, the rogue overall has been noted as a great farming class, a great gold making class overall, and overall it's just a brilliant class in general. That being said, let's move on to our next one at number 9, which is the Demon Hunter. Now, the Demon Hunter is definitely one of my most favourite classes to actually farm with at this moment in time. This is most predominantly with the Vengeance Demon Hunter, as I am able to just solo current content stuff and not have the fear of dying. This is most predominantly with skinning as well. I find this to be a great way in order to make gold with, as the Demon Hunter has great survivability overall. It just does not die, especially in Vengeance mode. It also has, along with this, great and most impressively, its AoE abilities, which are just able to just burn things down so easily, as well as they are able to get around obstacles using their jump abilities, much like Heroic Leap, and also their dash abilities, which is kind of like Blink, but just a hell of a lot better. Overall, they are a brilliant utility class, especially with their double jump abilities as well, and overall this is why they're number 9 on this list, as basically the Demon Hunter should be one of your go-to gold farming classes in the open world and also raids and dungeons. That being said, let's go to our all-time best one at number 10, which is, at no surprise, the Druid. Now, the Druid is by far one of the best gold farming classes. Everyone knows this, so I'll keep this short and sweet. The Druid has the ability of being able to pick herbs just in the open world in its travel form. It does not have to get out. It has great abilities such as high AoE abilities, as well as being able to just sprint around dungeons much faster than any other class. The keynote things with this is its Dreamwalk ability, where it can just jump out of a dungeon or raid, reset, and then travel back through that in like no time at all, reducing the time of runs for dungeon farming, so that gives them additional abilities. And also with the Druid, they have the ability of being able to just solo and tank higher end content, with their self-healing they are able to just do that so easily and not being able to die. The thing of note for Druids is just in general they are the best gold farming class, so if you are a beginner and you have a Druid, make that your gold farming class of note and then go descendingly through this list. That being said, that is my pick for the 10 best gold making classes. Have a lovely rest of the day, and I shall see you in the next video, which will be soon.